وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. All praise be to Allah, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon His Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and those who follow in his footsteps till the last day. Last time we stopped at page 75, 74, I guess, huh?
Yeah, 74, Sheikh, 74.
74. Just let's go over what we have taken. Okay, again, we go back to say and to mention that these classifications, or let's say it's better to say differentiation and discrimination between what's called haqiqa and majaz, the actual meaning, and the metaphorical meanings or figurative meaning, is all not known from the pre-Islamic era, nor the linguistics, the scholars of language, nor in the sayings, we have known. Some, and we mentioned that the ulama were of three, they took three trends with regard to this. Some of them, and this is the most, probably to be the true trend, and Allah knows best, that there is no majaz in both the Arabic language and in the Quran. And the others, they said there's majaz only in the language, but not in the Quran, okay? And the others said there is majaz in both. The ulama who took the trend that majaz or figurative meanings is not, it's due to the fact that it's not known from the righteous predecessors, known from the pre-Islamic era, known from the Arabic linguistics or Arabic scholars, nor from the early ulama, grounded scholars like Shafi'i, who was well acquainted with the Arabic language, nor from Imam Malik, nor those eminent scholars. So they rejected the notion that there exists anything called majaz, because it was also taken as a vehicle and as a leeway for the deviant sects to negate and reject or try to misinterpret the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, and then Allah knows best what we can say about this, that the scholars who rejected the notion that there's majaz in both Quran and Sunnah are more likely to be right. Now, those who thought, that majaz and haqiqa is just a terminology they used, they started to say that there is haqiqa lughawiyya and haqiqa urfiyya, okay? And the haqiqa urfiyya, the haqiqa lughawiyya is the lexical meanings, okay? Like what they claim that, and they gave some examples, but the problem, this, what you can say, fact or actual meaning about some words, it might be applicable to some, but not applicable to all. The haqiqa urfiyya, they said, urfiyya customary, or you can say what the people got accustomed to, or what a field of people got accustomed to, and the factual, customary meanings, they gave it a general one, and there is specific or more khassa, okay, usage. Khassa is like the terminology in any field, okay? The haqiqa shar'iyya, it talks, we mentioned last time that the Prophet ﷺ, when he came, he spoke to the people in the language they know. However, there are certain words that had taken a special technical meaning, okay? As-salah is known in Arabic language to be a dua. Okay, this is the linguistic meaning. But in the haqiqa shar'iyya for it, the religious and Islamic technical meaning of it or legal meaning has changed it to something else. We come to realize that it is the the specific act, okay, or specific movements that begins with takbir and ends with taslim, done, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, and thus they defined a lot of things, okay? The, however, when we come to the majaz, as on page 75, well, you can start reading, and then inshallah we'll go over it. Yani, I don't want you to be bothered with this terminology if you cannot, get deeply to understand them, because it is again, unfortunately, it was a terminology used by a people who tried to alter or deviate in the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And since it is written for us to learn and to know what those people mean with the majaz, we have to know it, at least, to know it, so that inshallah later, if we go deeply into some books of Usool, you might find this, deeply rooted in some books. That's why, a lot of ilm al-kalam had, really, we can say, uh, had crept into Usool al-fiqh, due to the fact that the people dealt with Usool al-fiqh, they tried to get use of these, majaz and some other philosophical terminology. They try to inject into Usul fiqh as to use them to manipulate some of the texts of the Quran and Sunnah. However, we go back and say that anything that people differ in, it should be referred to Allah in His book and to the Messenger ﷺ in His Sunnah, and it should be understood in light of what the righteous predecessor said. And if there is an analogy, it should be clearly stated, and clearly this analogy or analogical deductions should be done in the right sense, as inshallah it will come with us in the future. You can start reading it.
Okay. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. The majaz, meaning figurative. Majaz linguistically refers to the place where bypassing is authorized. Majaz linguistically refers to the place where bypassing is authorized. Technically, it is divided into two categories: lughawi, which is lexical, and aqli, which is mental. Number one, majaz lughawi is the use of a word in other than its lexical sense because of a relationship with the original meaning, as long as there is evidence between bracket qarina to justify this usage. For example, the use of word lion to mean a courageous man. In this case, it is not used according to its original literal meaning, which is a carnivorous animal. The figurative usage, meaning a brave man, is given preference when the original meaning is bypassed or extended. The phrase, a relationship with the original meaning, is a condition which excludes mistaken usage of a word or its use in a joke contrary to its lexical sense. For example, someone says, "Take this pen," while pointing at a book. Similarly, if a word is deliberately used in a different sense and there is no relationship between the two meanings, for example, you say, "Take this book," or "I bought a book," and you really meant an apple in the former and a garment in the latter, there is no relationship between a book and an apple or a garment. The mind makes the transition from the first meaning to the second meaning due to the relationship. Thus, the relationship is like a bridge by which the mind crosses over from the literal to the figurative meaning. For example, if we say, "I saw a lion shooting," within bracket a rifle. The transitional bridge between the ferocious animal and the brave man is the shared quality of bravery. Now I will read the footnotes. Footnote number 107. Sheikh Al-Uthaymeen rahimahullah gave its general technical definition as an expression used in other than its original meaning, like lion, for a brave person. Al-Jizani defines it as an expression used correctly in other than its original meaning. Footnote number 108, for an expression to be correctly used figuratively, there must be a link between its actual meaning and its figurative meaning, known in Ilm al-Bayan as the alaqa, the link. 109, rule. It is impermissible to understand an expression according to its figurative meaning without a correct proof which prevents the original meaning, referred to in Ilm al-Bayan as qarina, which is a context. Whenever it is possible to use an expression according to its actual meaning, using it according to its figurative meaning is not allowed, and it must be used according to its original literal meaning. Whenever it is impermissible to use the expression according to its literal meaning, it must then be used according to its figurative meaning, as long as there exists a context, the qarina, indicating the impermissibility of its original literal use. Ibn al-Najjar said, like lion, which is actually used to mean a carnivorous animal and figuratively used for a brave man. If it is used without a context, it means a carnivorous animal. Because the original use is its literal meaning and the figurative usage is in contradiction to the original use. Rule, metaphor does not exist relative to the verses on the divine attributes. If what is mentioned above is understood, figurative usage cannot be applied to the verses on the divine attributes, as it is possible to a courageous man. It's possible to use them according to their literal meaning, and there is no necessity to turn elsewhere. Therefore, it is obligatory to understand these verses on the divine attributes according to their literal meaning, and it is impermissible to explain them figuratively. And that is the madhab of the Salaf, the early generations of righteous scholars. Footnote number 110, as in the case where someone uses a code to communicate information without others knowing the actual meaning of what is being said. Footnote number 111, actually, it is the quality of fearlessness which is instinctive in the lion and chosen by the men for a variety of reasons in various different circumstances. You can explain, Sheikh.
Okay. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalam ala rasulillah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it easy to us to digest these matters about al-majaz. And he said, يعني المجاز, and he said المجاز اللغوي. We have majaz lughawi and we have majaz aqli, and we have two kinds. And he said majaz linguistically refers to the place where يعني bypassing, or actually in Arabic he said ما محله الجواز, يعني what could be accepted. Okay, يعني مجاز اللغة. However, this is a problem in the definition of majaz. Actually, some of them, they defined it saying, يعني they said المجاز هو, as for example, Sheikh Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah, he said an expression used in other than its original meaning. Okay, and he gave example with the line. And usually there is a qarina, and the qarina, he mentioned the qarina here means context, but actually qarina means presumption or a reason, presumed. There is a reason and a justification. Qarina is a reason, justification, presumption. It could mean all of this. And the problem is qarina, they made it open, okay? And this is what the ulama didn't accept about the definition in majaz. But anyhow, those people, as we said, they used al-majaz, and we have to face what they used as al-majaz al-laghawi. If they meant, for example, majaz, is, to use a word in other than its popular meaning, due to similarity. This is what's called qarina. Like, for example, when you say, I saw a lion, holding a rifle, okay, or, uh, bombarding or, shooting, at the enemies. So we would realize that he didn't mean the real lion, because there is a reason here or qarina that because of this context and the reason behind this context, it cannot be said that it is a real lion, because the real lion cannot use something to shoot against. Okay, so this is the language, and he said here in foot number 109, he said he said a rule: it is impermissible to understand an expression according to its figurative meaning without a correct proof, which prevents the original meaning. And this is the qarina. Qarina here is actually a correct proof which prevents the origin, which cannot convey the first meaning. Okay, he said whenever it is possible to use an expression according to its actual meaning, using it according to its figurative meaning is not allowed. Okay, and it must be used according to its literal meaning. Whenever it is impermissible to use the expression according to its literal meaning, it must then be used according to its figurative meaning, as long as there exists, a qarina, presumption, or a proof, okay, or a correct, context. He said he gave her another rule. He said metaphor, which is the majaz, does not exist relative to the ayat on the divine attributes. Okay, and this is a rule we have to understand and to know. Why? Because we cannot attain to change what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned in his book and in his Quran, other than what he meant, other than the meaning, because the Quran should be explained with the Quran or by the Prophet ﷺ. And who would come and proceed in proceed and as we say and say that his words would be more eloquent or more clear than what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in his book. And that's why we said it's a problem when we talk about those people who say that all of the ayat of sifat that talks about the divine attributes are majaz, because those people by inference, by by actually the meaning of what they say means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not make his Quran plain and clear and understandable by the audience. And we find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has spoken to all people alike. He did not specify, nor the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that the Quran is only specific to certain people. No, to all. And anyone who talks to anybody, he wants his words to be self-explanatory to the best of their ability. And who's better in explaining what he meant, you know, by what he says, except Allah and except or after Allah and after his Prophet? No one. And we haven't found that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned once that we should not look into these ayat in according to their literal meaning. Rather, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put a rule we should refer to. There is nothing like unto him, and he is the all-hearing, the all-seeing. وهو السميع البصير. ليس كمثله شيء وهو السميع البصير. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned this, ayah as a rule. It would actually refute both those who denies and rejects the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and those who try to come up with a description of how are the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or try to make similitude, or similes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, in the context, he said, at the end of page 76, those who have the book, the mind makes the transition from the first meaning to the second meaning due to the relationship. And this is the qarina again. Thus, the relationship is like a bridge by which the mind crosses over from the literal to the figurative meanings. Okay. For example, he said, I saw a lion shooting a rifle or a gun. The transitional bridge between the ferocious animal and the brave man is the shared quality of bravery. That's why we came to know this. Types of relationship, you didn't read this yet, huh? Have you
Not
read
yet. Not yet.
okay, go over it, please.
Okay. Types of relationship. The relationship can be in the form of similarity, like the similarity between the brave man and the lion. As demonstrated in the previous example, due to the common trait of bravery shared by both. They could also be dissimilar. For example, if you said, the ruler sent one of his eyes to look around the city, eyes here meaning spies, and word used as majaz, whose relationships contains resemblance, is called isti'ara, literally borrowing. Because you compare qualities, then you borrow the name of the resembling thing and then relate it to what it resembles. Any word used as a majaz whose relationship has no resemblance is called majaz mursal, free metaphor, because it is free from the tie of comparison. There are many non-resembling relationships because such relationships are general to all words that are suitable or that have close relations between their meanings, enabling a correct transfer of meaning between them. For example, the common relationship between the whole and its parts easily allows for majaz. When you say the police caught the thief, only some of the police were involved, not all of them. Similarly, the usage of word I to mean the entire person in the previous example of the spy. Also, cause and effect. If you mention cause and mean the effect, for example, you say, Ra'ain al-matar, we took care of the rain, meaning the crops watered by the rain. Or you mention the effect and you mean the cause. For example, you say the sky rained spring, meaning it rained, indicating spring has come. Now I will read the footnotes. Footnote number 112. If there is no resemblance between the actual meaning of words and the figurative meaning, it is called majaz mursal. 113. The majaz mursal may take place by addition, as in the Almighty Allah's statement, Laysa kamithlihi shay'un. There is nothing similar to him. The kaf added to mithli is to emphasize the negation of resemblance to Allah. The majaz mursal could take place by deletion, as in the Almighty Allah's statement, was alil qarya, ask the town. That is, ask the people of the town. The word people was deleted figuratively. There are many other forms of majaz mentioned in the science of rhetoric, ilm al-bayan. Some aspects of haqiqa and majaz are mentioned in Usool al-Fiqh because the indications and implications of expressions may either be real or figurative. Consequently, it is necessary to know and understand both of them as well as the rulings governing them. For example, the word lamsun, meaning touch, is literally used to indicate touching by the hand or the coming in contact of two objects, and figuratively to indicate sexual intercourse. Consequently, the jurists were of three different opinions concerning the meaning of the following Quranic verse. أَوْ لَامَسْتُمُ النِّسَاءَ فَلَمْ تَجِدُوا مَاءً فَتَيَمَّمُوا سَعِيدًا طَيِّبًا. It translates, you touched women and cannot find water, then make tayammum from clean earth. This verse occurs in the context of the factors which break the state of ritual purity, tahara. Ash-Shafi'i rahimahullah and most of his students ruled that lams meant the touch of the hand or body contact. Therefore, if a man intentionally or accidentally touched a woman or vice versa, skin on skin, then both of them would lose their state of wudu. This is according to Shafi madhab, Sheikh?
Yes, yes.
Imam
According to
Malik,
Shafi'i madhab,
yeah.
this is even the case up to now. They are so even, to the extent that in Haram, when they, it was very crowded, some of them who were very strict Shafi'is, he would wear socks in his hands, like gloves, But that time, there is no gloves. He would put socks so that he won't touch a woman, okay? And, they said there was a Hanafi who was making tawaf. And, the Ahnaf and Shafi'i are used to compete and still. So when he saw this Shafi'i, putting, this in his hands, okay? And this Hanafi was actually a woman. When she saw him, she put her hand over his forehead and she said, I fixed you. You are a Shafi'i. She meant, now because she is a woman, when she touched his forehead, he would go and make wudu. Okay? In haram, it's a problem, with the people. They said this happened, someone reported this as really happening in haram. Okay? And this is a problem. This man, if he would touch a woman, he would go and make wudu. And it's due to the word lamastum, whether it is. And it is actually, it was used in a very nice way to, to infer the meaning of coming onto one's wife in the bed relation. Yes.
Imam Malik rahimahullah and most of his students also ruled that lams meant touching by the hand. However, he stipulated that wudu would only be broken if the touch were pleasurable, whether the touch were intended or unintended, skin on skin or otherwise. This was also the most well-known position of Imam Ahmad. They took the position that the deciding factor was the occurrence of pleasure due to the existence of accurate hadith stating that the Prophet ﷺ used to touch his wife, Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anhu's foot in order to move it out of the way when he was making sujood. Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ruled that lams is the words under consideration meant sexual intercourse, and therefore touching a woman did not break wudu, whether it was accompanied by a pleasurable feeling or not. This position was based on the previously mentioned hadith of Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, as well as another from her reported by Sahabi Urwa radiallahu ta'ala an, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam kissed some of his wives, then left for salah without performing wudu. That's all, Sheikh can explain.
Yes, Jazakallah. Right. As we can understand from this, what he mentioned here as the relationships or the qara'in, okay, the relationships can be in a form of a similarity. And he mentioned that if we would accept what's so-called majaz, okay, there should be a relationship, to differentiate the meaning, which is, they said, its original meaning, or its, let's say, most popular meaning to the other meaning. And, they call this relationship isti'ara, okay? Yani one of the names of the majaz is isti'ara. And they said literally means borrowing, because you compare qualities, then you borrow the name of the resembling thing and then relate it to what it resembles, okay? And he said any word used as a majaz whose relationship has no resemblance is called majaz mursal, free metaphor, okay? Because it is free from the tie of comparison. There are many non-resembling relationships because such relationships are general to all words that are suitable or that have close relationships between their meanings, enabling. And in Majaz al-Mursal, free metaphor is when there is like wasal al-qarya, okay? Ask the village. And there is no resemblance between the village and the people of the village. But some ulama, they objected on this and they said a village cannot be called a village without tenants, without a people. So asking the village means asking the villagers or the people who are living in the village, like the same as qafila, or al-'ir. Al-'ir cannot be 'ir without a people driving it. Okay, otherwise it would be a group of camels, not 'ir. Okay, that's why they say we have a proverb. It says this person is لا في العير ولا في النفير. Yani this person is not in the 'ir nor in the nafir. Al-'ir is usually used for trade, a caravan for trade. So he's not amongst the people who are trading in a caravan, nor he's in the people going for jihad or for fight in nafir. And both words, nafir and 'ir, is mentioned in the Quran and used, okay? Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in al-'ir in Surah Yusuf, okay? And he mentioned nafir in Surah al-Isra, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ أَكْثَرَ نَفِيرًا. And we made you, outnumbering your enemies in an army or in your number. He said here, also cause and effect, okay? When he said some of the metaphors could be due to the cause and effect. So there is a word, it says رَعَيْنَا الْمَطَرِ, okay? Ra'ayna means we had, okay, the rain. We harvested through herding our sheep, the rain. And Ra'ayna means from Ra'i, actually, okay? He said we took care, but Ra'i here means herding the sheep. And al-matar means, the effect of al-matar is what? is actually the grass, and the grass was due to al-matar, so they call it al-matar. Let me also make sure that this is a yes, he said here. Yes, this is the meaning. Yeah? He said here we took care of the rain, but meaning the crops by the rain. يعني رعينا, we herded it, or we used, we got our sheep or our flocks, herded in the crops. Or he said here, or you mention the effect and you mean the cause. For example, this is the opposite of that. The sky rained spring, meaning it rained, indicating spring has come. Okay. He said here the Majaz al-Mursal may take place by addition, as in the Almighty statements, ليس كمثله شيء. There is nothing similar to him. The kaf added to مثله is to emphasize the negation of resemblance to Allah. Because if some people, in this ayah, ليس كمثله شيء, some, objected on the usage here, and astaghfirullah, those people who objects on what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, and the highest eloquence is in the Quran, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoken this Quran to a people who were very eloquent, and they tried their best to challenge or to criticize the Quran, and they couldn't. This person, who mentioned, he said, how come Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would say there is nothing like his likeness? Okay, because kaf means mithl. So if you say there is nothing like laysa mithl Allah shay, this person, if you can understand it well, he tried to object on the ayah in its formation, and he said, how come Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would say there is nothing like mithli? It means there is something equal like Allah. If you could understand this argument or this doubt this person tried to cast against this ayah, but it was understood by the people, by the early generation, as well by the kuffar, not in that sense. Okay, ليس كمثله شيء means to stress the fact, and emphasize the negation of resemblance to Allah. Okay, ليس كمثله شيء, there is nothing like unto him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, in absolute sense. Here he said the Majaz Mursal could take place by deletion. By deletion, as in the Almighty statement, and this is what they said, ask the town, and we mentioned this. Okay. He said also there are many other forms of Majaz mentioned in the science of rhetoric and al-Bayan. Some aspects of Haqiqa and Majaz are mentioned in Usool al-Fiqh because the indications and implications of these expressions may either be real or figurative. Consequently, it is may be understood like that. Okay, like in the example of lams. For example, the word lams, touch, is literally used to indicate touching by the hand or the coming into contact of two objects, and figuratively to indicate the intercourse. Consequently, the jurists were of three different opinions concerning the meanings of the following ayah, and this ayah is in Surah Al-Ma'idah, as we know, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, the what are the reasons behind making this the substitute of wudu. Okay, it's ayah number 6, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, أو لامستم النساء فلم تجدوا ماء فتيمموا صعيدا طيبا. And the ulama, they said mulamasa here would mean coming onto your wives, because And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran and in the He subhanahu wa ta'ala he uses the best words to confer and to make the inference of the meaning to be not to be bashful to the person who would say it. Okay, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala he said فَلَمَّا تَغَشَّاهَا, and for example in coming onto his wife, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned Adam coming into his wife and she turned into pregnancy, he said فَلَمَّا تَغَشَّاهَا حَمَلَتْ حَمْلًا خَفِيفًا فَمَرَّتْ بِهِ. So when he came onto her, over her, shrouding her, this is the meaning, she became pregnant. This is the meaning. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses words that when a person would recite, he will not find, any resistance to say these words. It is the highest level of eloquency. Okay. So this ayah, Shafi'i in Shafi'i madhab, they said that lamasa is like lamasa. Okay. So it's not used lamastum, lamastum here. Okay. And they use it to mean that touching skin to skin. Okay. And some Shafi'is still up to now hold this meaning. He mentioned also Imam Malik rahimahullah and most of his students also ruled that lams meant touching by the hand. However, he made stipulation. He said, if it is with a pleasure, if someone touches his wife with pleasure, then wudu becomes, his wudu would be invalidated and he has to make wudu again. And Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ruled that lams is in the ayah meant the intercourse, and therefore touching a woman did not break wudu. And if Allah knows best, if lams was like what understood by Shafi'i, the Prophet ﷺ would have clarified it to the Ummah, and because this would lead to an invalid salah. So the Prophet ﷺ would have mentioned it clearly, and the Sahaba would have spoken about, to convey this message to at least those who come, whom they come in touch with from other cultures, okay, or other languages. But this was not known from them. He said, Al-Majaz al-Lughawi, we will just leave this, I guess, inshallah, till the next week, so that we can understand it well. I hope, inshallah, so far we are clear about what's meant of Majaz anyhow. And hopefully, again, they used it as a terminology, to mean what was used in language other than what they claim to be haqiqah. And some ulama, they said all of this are a linguistic or a language usage, and it is, if it is used like this or like that, this is how it is understood through the context, or due to other reasons, we started to realize the meaning. As we mentioned, many times, that a word by itself does not convey, a sound meaning unless you put it in a sentence. So if you say, for example, even a word, if I say to you, Muhammad, who's Muhammad? Do you mean the Prophet ﷺ? Or do you mean Muhammad, Ibrahim, our, brother who used to be with us? Or do you mean someone else? You have to specify that in a context. But if you say Nabiyuna Muhammad, okay, now we have a complete sentence. we have a meaning. We can, if you say a word, رأس, as we said, or for example, bait, does it by itself mean something to us? Yeah, we could visualize bait to be a house, but what do you mean by bait? Is it Baytullah, which is the Haram, Mecca, or the Kaaba, or Masjid, or bait of someone? You have to specify. Also, even if you say al-bayt, what does it mean to you? Al-bayt, the house. There was no words before it, or no phrases, sentences before it to know that this refers to something. So you have to specify it in a context. So we should realize that language, whatever this language, whether it is English or, for example, your local language or Arabic language, a word by itself will not connote, will not give, a definite or definitive meaning unless we put it in a context and clear context. Okay, so if you say, even in usage, I saw a lion, the people will understand that you saw a real animal called lion. Huh? But if you say, I saw a lion on the pulpit, now you meant, a person, an orator, a man who was very brave to say something that people couldn't say, whether to audience or to others. So this is the meanings in Arabic language, that the Arabic language will not be understood without putting it in a context. And the context, uh, will clarify what's meant by the usage of every word in that sentence. Okay, so classifying it into haqiqa and majaz would, turn into just, a terminology used by some people, but we will look into it whether it is, justifiable, reasonable or not. I hope, inshallah, it's clear, and the next week, inshallah, we'll carry on with the majaz to finish it, and we'll go into al-amr. Okay, al-amr, which is the command. Okay, and why is this? Because this is part of the speech. We are again talking about the language, the Arabic language, and how the sentences are formed. So when one comes to the Quran and Sunnah, you will understand what's meant by every context. And that's why it's nice we are taking some examples like Lamastum Nisa, why some ulama, they had the the meaning different than what's what's really Allah knows best, or what's the majority of the ulama mentioned. It's due to the difference in the meaning of lamastum nisa. What does it mean? Okay, inshallah, if you have questions, or we'll stop here, inshallah, and next week we'll carry on. May Allah
Walaikum assalam,
reward you
Sheikh.
for your
MashaAllah, Sheikh,
contribution.
we really enjoy. We know this is an essential part of the ilm. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. And we keep continuing, Sheikh, and inshallah, be motivated, inshallah. Even if 1%, 2%, 3% benefit, inshallah, we have achieved our purpose, Sheikh.
Jazakallah khair. Subhanallah, the knowledge sometimes becomes a bit stiffy and hard when you come deeply into its details. That's why,
Yeah.
but inshallah, knowledge is taken bit by bit, and gradually. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even it was mentioned that some of the ulama, like Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, he used to sometimes, when he cannot understand, some parts of the knowledge, he would plead to Allah, in his sujood and say, Ya Muallim Ibrahim, allimni, wa ya Mufahim Sulaiman, fahimni. Oh, the teacher, the one who taught Ibrahim, teach me, and the one who gave deep understanding to Sulaiman alayhi salam over his father, Dawood, whom both were prophets. But subhanallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, فَفَهَّمْنَاهَا Sulaiman. So acquiring the fahm and understanding needs a lot of efforts and a lot of ibadah. So too, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy on us to gain in knowledge and to gain in taqwa and ibadah, ya Rabbil Alameen. Jazakum Allah khair. May Allah reward you and bless you. Increase the soul in knowledge and faith. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا رب العالمين. If you have a question, you can ask. If not, there is no questions, then inshallah we will conclude our class today. وصلى الله على محمد.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khairan, Sheikh. Very, very good, very elaborative session.
آمين وإياك وإياك أخي. جزاك الله خير. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you for your attentive listening. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك وصلى الله على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Alaykum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.